you're going to open up a Google Doc, a Pages doc, or a Microsoft Word doc, whatever you prefer. Format your page into landscape mode. So, we've got portrait, landscape, and then give me 2 columns. At the top of the left-hand column, you're going to write Federalists, and at the top of the right-hand column, you're going to put Anti-Federalist. And then underneath each of those headings, you're going to write some names. So for our Federalists, we've got Ben Franklin, Alexander Hamilton, John Jay, James Madison, George Washington. Underneath the Anti-Federalists, we've got Thomas Jefferson, John Hancock, Patrick Henry, Richard Henry Lee, and George Mason. So add those under your. But what are your current political views? Okay. Do you typically align yourself with this notion of having a strong, powerful central government? Or do you typically align yourself with the idea that maybe the power should reside with individual states? So you can kind of look at the list of names, and then you can also start thinking about the idea of politics and kind of like, where do you align yourself? And that might give you a clue as to which group. Go to your rubric with me. The first thing that I passed out. Go to your rubric. Oh, Mark, did everybody get one? Go ahead and write your name at the top and then circle which group you're in. Okay, so a couple of things you guys need to know on your rubric. 1s are bad. Okay, 1s are bad, 3s are good. You want to be in the 3 column. Okay, some of you guys might have some 2s in there, and that'll still be fine, but you definitely want to stay out of that 1 column. So there's basically 2 ways you're going to get points with this project. One way is through participation in the actual debate, and then the other way is by conducting research to prepare for the debate. Where you guys are going to organize your research is in the document you just formatted. Okay, so like when I say, hey, I need your research, that's what I'm talking about, that T-chart. Okay, now the way we've done this in the past, we've done it for the past 3 years, and it's worked pretty well. But I will say there are some downsides to a debate with a class this big. Okay, and that's part of the reason, like, if you're in debate, they don't have 25 people standing on the stage at the same time. So I'm going to kind of act like the moderator, and I'm going to try to facilitate the debate as best as I can. In the 3 prior years, typically the class does really well for about maybe 30-ish minutes, and then it kind of starts to taper off. And a lot of the time, we haven't gotten to address all of the debate topics. Okay? At that point, when the debate starts to kind of die down, I will step in and say, hey, what about these things? And I might also utilize some of the questions that I've asked you guys at the bottom to help facilitate the debate. So if like the debate starts to die and we've only heard from like 7 people, I'm going to step up and I might say, okay, how much power should the President of the United States actually have? And then at that point, that would open up the floor to people to contribute to that particular question. Does that make sense? Okay. For the most part, it's very organic for about 30 minutes. And then it usually starts to taper off. And then that's when I'll step in and start interjecting some questions so that you guys have an opportunity to participate in the debate. Okay. The other thing is, if you look at the topics that I have listed there, we have, let's see, how many we got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I only have 9 topics listed there, but this is not a extensive list of everything that you could talk about. Okay, so if you're working your way through your chapter 9 notes and you want to say something about the Whiskey Rebellion, like that would be a great topic to throw in there. That would be a great topic to throw in there. You could use that, and you could attack that from either perspective, right? Federalists or Anti-Federalists. Okay, so if there's another topic that you would like to address, or maybe you're reading through your chapter 9 or whatever, and you're like, oh, that's interesting to me, write it down and just let me know. Like, hey, I want to talk about this. And then I can add that to my list, and then I can prompt the discussion that way if it doesn't organically go that direction. Does that make sense? Yes, no? Okay, cool. So debate participation, you're going to have to say something. Dun, dun, dun. You're going to have to say something. Hey, you're going to have to make some type of claim. Okay, it could be about any of these topics that I have listed, or maybe any other additional topics that you would like to add to that. You're going to have to say something. Okay, but just simply saying something is only going to get you 1 point. Okay, if you want 2 points, you need to make a claim and you need to support the claim with a primary source. Okay, and that could be maybe something you've found in your textbook that kind of rings a bell, and then maybe you go to Google and you do some more research with that thing that you found in your textbook. Okay, I've also given you guys a few sources, keyword few, that align with that particular perspective. So you should have either gotten some documents that are kind of like pro-federalist, or you should have gotten some documents that are anti-federalist. I'm going to say this again. This is not an extensive list of the sources that you can use. Okay, this is a jumping off point. This is a jumping off point. So when you guys start your research today, if you're looking at that packet of documents and you're like, wow, I'm not really interested or passionate in any of these things. Well, what I would recommend doing next is coming over to some of these key people and doing a little bit of research about those key people in conjunction with the topics that are listed, right? Like, so for example, maybe you're a Federalist and I didn't give you anything from Benjamin Franklin. Okay, well, go on the internet. See if you can find anything that Benjamin Franklin said about any of these topics, maybe some of the personal beliefs that he has written about. Okay, or maybe you're an anti-federalist and you're like, man, you didn't give me anything from George Mason or Richard Henry Lee. Okay, fine. Go do some research. See if you can find anything that George Mason said or anything that Richard Henry Lee said, and then tie that to one of the topics or the questions that I have listed. Does that make sense? So again, your packet that you received is not an extensive list of all of the documents that you can use. If I printed you a list of all of the documents you can use, your packet would be, it'd be like a textbook of information. Okay? I do think that the packet is a decent place to start, though. It's a decent place to start. Okay, if I were going to participate in this debate, I would probably start with maybe one of the documents that I've provided to you. You don't have to read every word and every line from every document. You guys also know that when you're using the internet, there's a great tool that you can use, right? It's called Command F. You guys realize what that does, right? Like, you can literally type in a word, like pull up a document, and you can type in Command F, the economy, or Command F, constitutionality of the national bank, or Command F, power of the president, or whatever. And then that will literally port you to any place within the document where it talks about those things. On the Canvas page, if you guys go all the way to the bottom, you will see digital copies of both sets of documents that I've provided to you. Now, why would you need both sets? Well, Jet, are you a Federalist or an Anti-Federalist? Federalist. So what I would recommend Jet doing here in just a minute when I say ready, set, go, is I would download the electronic copies of the opposite faction. Okay, I've given you the hard copy of your faction. Download the electronic copies of the opposite faction. Because look at your second category of debate participation. Okay? Not only are you going to have to make a claim or present a point, but you're also going to have to make a counter argument. And the only way you're going to be able to effectively get all 3 points for your counter argument is that if you're actually familiar with what the other faction is saying. Are you tracking with me? Is this making sense? Okay. You guys probably are smart enough to know, you're AP kids, that like when you get into a debate with somebody or you get into an argument with somebody, it seems like you're much more informed if not only can you have an opinion on a topic, but that you can also present some information from the other perspective and use that as kind of like where you're going to tear them apart in their own argument. Cool? So you're going to have a point of your own, okay, that's backed up with some other outside source that supports your claim. You're also going to have to make a counter argument to something somebody else said, okay? And then the 2 other areas where you guys are getting graded on is with your research. So these last 2 down here, you've got a research category and you've got an evidence category. I had a lot of people in second hour ask today, they said, if I'm choosing to use other sources in my arguments, do I need to cite those sources? Yes. So if you're going to use something outside of the packet that I just gave you, in your T-chart, you need to cite where you found that stuff. Does that make sense? Cool. So basically, you're being graded on 4 criteria. 2 are coming from actually participating in the debate, and then 2 are coming from research that you have done, and then specific evidence that you have cited. Jeff? Yes. Yes. So I want you to pretend like, okay, are we going with the Constitution or are we going with the Articles of Confederation, right? Like put yourself in the same era as when these guys were kind of fighting with each other as they're drafting what needs to be the governing document of this country. I feel like I covered everything that I needed to cover. Are there any other questions that you guys have? Okay. I'm going to warn you, okay, because this is what typically happens in the past. I try to provide some adequate time in class to prep. Obviously, you guys have the entire weekend, but I recognize it is homecoming this weekend, but you've got the weekend. I'll try to give you guys some time in class a little bit on Monday. I'll try to give you guys a little bit of time in class on Tuesday, but I can tell you right now, if you wait till Tuesday or Wednesday night to try to do this, you're going to be in a world of hurt. Okay. Oh, I did forget to mention one thing. On your little research row here, okay, you get 1 point if you address at least 3 of the debate topics listed below. If you want 2 points, you need to talk about 4 or 5 of those topics. And if you want 3 points, you need to address 6 or more of the topics. And I'm just saying this not to be a jerk, but because I've seen how this has played out in the past. If you're only researching 2 or 3 of the topics, and then 10 other people have contributed to the debate before you've stepped up and said anything, and you're like, oh crap, like everybody's already said everything that I wanted to say, you need to have some other things that you can throw in there. So try to address at least 6 of those topics, or have some of your own topics. Just make sure you clear those with me before you start doing a bunch of research with them. The last thing I would want you guys to do is to get here on debate day, and then, it's pretty common that the 5 or 6 people that usually participate in class the most are the ones that are like clashing with each other the whole time. And then the more kind of quiet, reserved people are sitting there not saying anything. And then like their topics and their research are just getting taken from them. And then they get to the end and there's like 7 people who haven't said anything. I will provide an opportunity for you guys to say something at that point because I don't want you to just miss out on those topics. But I guess what I'm trying to say is broaden, try to touch on as many of those topics as possible in case maybe like Omalara and Gabby are just like knocking heads for like 10 minutes and they're filibustering the whole debate and nobody else can say anything, that you guys have some backup options that you could address if you needed to. Are you guys even on the same team? Oh, good. Yeah. Please do not stand in front of the class and read Green Eggs and Ham for 4 hours. Dang it. Okay? Okay.